We're carrying on our series in leisure, and I hope you're getting into it. And what I've been thinking a little bit, particularly this morning, is I wonder if anybody out there thinks they've got anything left to learn about leisure. I wonder if people just think, well, actually, Ash, I know all about leisure. I've got leisure completely down. There are nothing more that you can tell me about the subject of leisure. Leisure is just that thing that you do when you've got some free time. So no need to explain that anymore. What about if I said to you, have you mastered being in the moment yet? Have you got that down? Have you covered all those bases? Have you covered the idea that just in the moment you can be fully there and fully present? Or have you got some room to improve on that score? What about work-life balance? Have you got that down yet? I'm 46, been working for, feels like, long enough to have work-life balance sorted, and was undone by it earlier this year. What about headspace? Have you got headspace down? So maybe you'll indulge me, and maybe you'll say, oh, maybe there's still some things I could learn about leisure. This week we're looking at, as Dave's just read for us, two characters that have become like the biblical litmus test for leisure. For anybody who's thinking about faith, anybody who's trying to live out this perfectly balanced life, or even attempting to live a balanced life, these two characters have become like the benchmark. They've become the reference point for if you're on the route towards a healthy, leisurely with God life, or if you're going down the wrong path. And we've sort of viewed them through this lens. And just very briefly, if you were paying attention to the reading, let me just give you like an overview summary of the story. Mary, don't know what you know about Mary and Martha, it's the Mary and Martha story. Mary had some high expectations. She wanted everything to be perfect, and she sits at the feet of Jesus fully embracing the moment, just in a sense nailing leisure. And Martha, she had the same. She had some high expectations. She wanted everything to be perfect, but in the story, she gets stressed in preparation, and instead of embracing everything and grabbing every moment, she threatens to miss it. And what Christianity has done, what scholars have done, what anybody who's trying to follow a life of faith has done, has zoomed in on this moment over the years, has really zoned in and like zeroed in on the lives of these two women in this kitchen, in this moment, trying to find a formula for the perfect way of leisure in life. And I think, and you might agree with me, if you've ever had anybody round for dinner, that moment just before you've ever had anybody round for dinner, I think it feels a little bit unfair, particularly on Martha, to have over 2,000 years of beady-eyed Christian religious types zeroing in on her kitchen 10 minutes before she has not just the neighbours round or your good old friends, when you want everything to be perfect, but she has the Messiah round. There's a bit of pressure on that moment. And we've judged her. Like we've zoomed in and we've gone, right, she's stressed. What's wrong with her? She's got a bit of a bad rap in that sense. And part of my reflections on this story is, in those moments of our lives, of course there's stress. Of course, Martha misses the moment. My guess would be for us, maybe you've got some awesome Zen bubble. I know a few of you pretty well. I know some of you have got some pretty strong Zen going around them, and you say pretty chilled all the time. But my guess would be that we can all relate to that kind of scenario. Particularly today, we live with crazy high expectations put on us and of ourselves. We live with some real insane time pressures. And this expectation that we have can really, I think, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, even when you're doing one of the best things ever, with those pressures and those expectations on you, like Martha, they can suck the living daylights out of your leisure experience. You can be wherever you want. And yet, if the bar of your expectations is crazy high, your leisure can really suffer. Even in perfect moments, we can miss it. It reminds me of a moment in a film that some of you may have seen. Some of you may have dismissed the film based on the title, and I don't know if we've got the quote up. Fingers crossed, but if not, just tune in. It's the Barbie movie. And there's this like incredible, and Barbie the movie, I know some of you like, you're starting with the Barbie movie. The Barbie movie, as I've looked at it and I've studied it, it's more of a social commentary than it is a film about a doll. It's more of an observation of where we're at. It's saying loads of things about the pressures and expectations and the plastic realities that we're sometimes convicted to portray. And there's this wonderful speech, yes, we've got the quote, and it's by America Ferrera in the Barbie film. And she says, it's literally impossible to be a woman. It's literally impossible to be a woman. You've got to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have a career woman, but you have to be a career woman, but also be looking out for other people. You're supposed to stay pretty for men, but not so pretty that you tempt them too much or that you threaten other women because you're supposed to be part of the sisterhood. You have to never get old. Never be rude, never show off, never be selfish, never fall down, never fail, never show fear, never get out of line. It's too hard. It's too contradictory. And nobody gives you a medal or says thank you. And it turns out, in fact, you're not only doing everything wrong, but also that everything is your fault. And then she says, and I've sort of edited this a little bit because it was a very long speech / rant / insight on life. I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie themselves in knots so that people will like us. And if all of that is also true for a doll that's just representing women, then I don't even know. I think it's an unlikely place to go for a preaching illustration, a Barbie film. Don't know what you think about that, but I think it nails the pressure that is on people in the world that suck the living daylights out of the leisure opportunities of our expectations, the demands on our leisure time, the expectations on our leisure time that are put on us or that we put on ourselves. They are huge. We have crazy, unrealistic expectations of the joyous moments that we will have in life. And often, I think the Barbie film portrays this really well, certainly in parts, and certainly in this speech, is even when everything looks all right, even if we can present the plastic facade of appearing that we've got the best leisure life, underneath it, and I think this is the story of Martha, there can be a real brokenness. There can be a brokenness to our leisure experience. We can be doing all different kinds of things, and yet inside of us, almost threatening to burst out at any moment, there is fracture. Martha is like that. She is fracturing at the surface. Now, first thing I kind of want to draw attention to, first sort of landing spot I want us to think about is that all sorts to think about this text. I want you to be mulling it over, trying to think what's going on, what should we take from this. I think one of the first things I'd like us to consider is that God, and Jesus in this instance, he sees the fracture in all of us. Martha, and somebody texted me this as I was doing a text exchange about the songs earlier today. They said, Martha gets a bad rap. If you've done any study on this text, you'll see that that's often the case. That's often what we think. Martha gets a bad rap. And it's possible to look at the text and think that Jesus is just putting her in her place. It's possible to think that. In fact, it's possible to think with 21st century goggles on that Jesus is maybe a little bit dismissive of her. If you're reading this through the zeitgeisty eyes of somebody living today, looking back to the Bible for the first time, observing this story, gent goes into the kitchen, tells woman she's overly stressed. Yeah, it's a bit icky, isn't it, when you think of it like that? Religious male, condescending. It's definitely got the ick about it from our 21st century eye. What I really need to impress upon you is that really is our 21st century eye on this story. If you've read even 2 words about Jesus Christ, his character, his tone, his heart, his life, Jesus is nothing like that. And this moment is nothing like that. In fact, it's quite the opposite. So just a few things about this moment that might just help you to unpack it a little bit. First of all, the first thing that you notice about Jesus is that he's really gentle in this moment. He's gentle. I mean, it's a necessary invasion, but it's the gentlest necessary invasion that you could make. So what you might not notice looking back at the text is Jesus says her name twice. He's not nagging. In Greek literature, in the language of the time, the repetition of a name is not a nag. It expresses empathy and intimacy. I don't know if you can remember the passage where Jesus says about Jerusalem. He says, "Jerusalem, Jerusalem, I have longed to gather you under my arms like chicks." And it comes from a place of real longing to love, real care, real connection. Jesus, in this tricky moment, with maybe a head tilt, saying her name twice, comes and really softens the moment. The tension that's like palpable. Jesus comes and he says, "Martha, Martha." And he softens the moment. And he says, as he says her name twice, "I'm going to be gentle with you. I'm going to show you that I'm caring for you." And it's not the specifics of her work that Jesus is concerned with either. I think that's really important to get across as I explain the story. It's not the nature of the work that she's doing that he has any issue with, I don't think. He doesn't have an issue with work in that sense. He has an issue with the place that work has begun to occupy in her head. He has an issue with how fractured she has become holding all of these things together. That is what he speaks into. It's not the busyness, I don't think, as far as I can read it. It's not the nature of serving. It's not that role in the house even. It's the fact that he sees before him a woman who is breaking up under all of the pressures and expectations of it all. The Greek word is, and I always say Greek words wrong, it's my thing. He says it's tebezo, and it kind of has this, definitely not how you pronounce it. It's like the idea of a heart that is spun in a million different directions. It's like this idea that somebody's been just completely ripped apart and pulled apart, and that is what Jesus sees. And he doesn't, if you notice, damn her. He doesn't really even stop her. He sees the fracture. And I think really beautifully, he sees the fracture and he just names it for her. This is the thing. This is the issue. It's diagnostics. It's not accusation. It's aid. It's not damning judgment. It's not that we can do too much, I don't think, although maybe we can. But it's more we can hold on to too much. We can think we need to do too much in our own strength. I would suggest, in fact, I know from personal experience that our leisure can be hijacked. And all my lovely family that are watching and people that know me will know it's definitely true of me. Leisure can get hijacked by how much we try and hold. The moments of leisure that we would want to enjoy can be invaded by the fracture that's going on inside of us. How much we are trying to hang on to and get right. Our expectations of ourselves, our expectations of other people, the moment being this incredible moment, unfair social pressures that come down to us through social media. And we try and hold them all, and in holding them all, we can lose the moment. And I think, like Martha, we try and fix it often, and again, like Martha, like me, don't know about you, just like me, we try and fix this by holding it all together tighter. Try and hold all the different things together tighter. Try and sort out all the different pieces to give us moments to breathe and have leisure. And in all of that story, what God sees, I think it's really beautiful, what Jesus acts on is the heart of our fracture. He looks not at everything that's going on round about, he zones in on Martha, and he sees that she's broken and she's breaking under the weight of all the expectation. And he lovingly and gently articulates that to her. He says, Martha, he's not slagging her off, he's not beating her up. He's saying, Martha, you've got loads that you're holding on to. You're going to suffocate under all of that. And he names what it is. I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure of therapy. If you've had a bad therapist, this illustration might not be for you, but if you've had a loving therapist, a good therapist, you might understand something of what I'm saying. I had some cognitive behavioral therapy in February of this year, and it was an amazing, incredible, I'm sure there's some rubbish ones. The guy who helped me knew me, liked me, loved me, if you like, and it was an incredible help to me as somebody sat in front of me with all of my stress and my angst and was able to just talk me through gently, name all of my troubles and all of my anxieties. It was unreal. It was a game changer for me. And I love this guy. The guy that helped me was just an incredible guy. And the next statement might sound like I'm being a bit dismissive of him and that way of healing. And it's not, because I know it's an amazing thing, and I think it's a thing given by God's grace. But God doesn't just know about our thought patterns and the chemicals that are going awry in our brains. He does know about that, but he knows us. Jesus knows Martha. God knows us, you, on such a deeper level than that. He knows what's really broken inside of us. He knows the brokenness of our souls. He knows the longings that we haven't even figured out yet. He's ahead of us. He's able to name our deepest hurts. He's able to name our deepest desires. He's able to whisper those in our ears gently in love. So that's the first thing. God, and that's the thing that I think we see in Martha. God sees and names the fracture in us. Now, Mary is the other person in the story, and I think thing to hang Mary's thoughts on, she models what it's like just to be. She models what it's like to be able to surrender. The first thing to sort of say about Mary, and I think there's a lot of judgment on her. I don't know exactly how much, kind of imagining what's going on in the story, but there's probably a lot of judgment on her that she's not doing anything. Certainly coming from Martha, there's that judgment. But my guess is in that room, there's lots of eyes on her going, what are you doing here? There's a lot of judgment saying she's just sat down. So I think the first thing to say about Mary's story is she's not just skiving. And she's not unaware of the amount of work that needs to happen for this event to take place. It's not a passive moment. She's not just happened upon the front because of thoughtlessness. She's not just hiding out of the way. It's a deliberate step that she's taken. She's actively decided not to do that stuff and actively decided to sit at the front. And it's a brave moment as far as I can figure it. It's like a male-dominated religious space with a bit of ritual included that would probably, I think, as far as I understand that culture, exclude her as a woman. And she actively goes against the grain. She's not just sat on her backside. She's had to actively pursue sitting on her backside. And I could be wrong about this, but my guess is that what she did to be where she was actually took more work than Martha was doing. More bravery, more determination to get to the front and sit in that space. And I think she shows us, part of what she shows us, is that as human beings, as people of faith, trying to figure out who God is and what he's doing, we are called to be as well as to do. Not that we've not to do stuff, but we are called to figure out how we are supposed to be. And you have to be, have a go at me if I'm wrong afterwards, I'd love a bit of chat. You have to be deliberate about just being. You don't just happen to be at Jesus' feet. You don't just happen to be soaking up the words of the Messiah. You have to take some bold, brave steps to really explore what it's like to be as a human being, to really be comfortable in the presence of your Creator. You will have to do some of the things that Mary did in this story. You'll have to bravely walk across the room. You'll have to break some cultural norms. You'll have to make a priority of your heart. What Mary does, I think, is really lovely. Look, she sat in the dust of Jesus. She sat where the disciples sit. She has to determine to be there. Nobody's going to give her that place on her own. She actively makes her way to the front and sits as a disciple. And she kind of says to Jesus, I'm a disciple. And there's a sense in which you look through the history records and you go, oh, they're the disciples. And Mary, I think, brilliantly goes against the grain and says, well, I'm a disciple. She invests in her being more than her doing. She invests in the restoration of her soul. She invests in getting her heart back. She invests in being enlightened. And she does it all at the feet of Jesus. And one of the things that you might think as you maybe hopefully try and reflect on that idea is that you've maybe been there before. You've maybe been in a spot like that in your life where you've said to yourself, I'm going to really invest in my being. I'm going to go on a spiritual journey. I'm going to find God again. My guess would be that in the flow of life, in the flow of my life, that we sort of go like that with it. We go, I'm really going to get to know God again. And sometimes that desire goes on the back burner. A question for us to consider might be, how can we stay in that moment? How can we keep like a Mary-like commitment? How can we determine to go against the grain just to be? Because the world will suck us up. That's what happens. You can have a moment where you go, I'm going to determine to be, I'm going to find myself, I'm going to get to know God, I'm going to just prioritize just being. I probably had something like that after my mini meltdown where I said, I'm just going to change my life and I'm going to determine to be. And I'm sure that I'll just forget that again. Because it happens, doesn't it? How can we stay in that moment? I think what the text shows us, I think what's happening, because Mary is just, and you will see, if you go and study Mary, you'll see this manifest in her personality. I think all that she's seen is just something that's able to keep all of her attention. It's become less about like a decision and more just of a, well, I've seen Jesus and he's got absolutely all the answers. He's just blown my mind and I don't have any options but to be at his feet, but to be in this place. She found something that was able to still her. That's what happened. As much as she decided to be still, Jesus stilled her. She found something that was able to take all of her attention. Do you have anything that can do that? I'm useless, me, with that stuff. I'm watching a film, I'm on my phone, I'm doing about 20 things all at the same time. And that, I guess, is this story. Because unlike, I guess, Martha, Mary just could not move for Jesus. And she just drew near to him. I remember we had a holiday in Cornwall, which anybody that's talked to me for 5 minutes, just an amazing place, love Cornwall. Go there every year, probably bore my family to death with Cornwall. We had a cheap holiday in Cornwall in COVID. We had a last minute thing, and we went to a campsite with nothing. Literally, it was a farmer's field. There was nothing there. There was 2 showers that you could see. I've told this story before, but you could see below the knee. That was it. Just had one very impressive natural feature. On the edge of the campsite was the English Channel. And on the top of the English Channel, every evening, was the sunset. And it was just, for this budget holiday, as collectively as a family, with not loads of money and not loads to do, we built pretty much our holiday around the lovely little pub lunches in Cadgwith Cove and the sunset. We didn't plan to do it. There was not much organisation, but the 5 of us just fell in love with this sunset and semi-consciously organised all our days around it. We'll get back for the sunset. We'll get back to see the massive sun sit on the ocean. And all of our conversation would change around about it. Just stopped being a trivial chat, and just because of the nature of it, we could talk about some pretty big and lovely things. It completely captured us, this amazing thing. We just happened to be there, did we? We were there because we'd found something that captured all of our attention. For Mary, it's not that there wasn't lots of things going on, I don't think. It's just that they had begun to pale because she'd seen Jesus. God was in the room. She couldn't see anything else. I think as we work towards a definition of leisure, that's worth considering. Leisure is when you find something that's so awesome, it governs your life, but not like a slave driver. It governs your life in a joyous way. That's when you're at leisure. You find something that's so amazing, it governs you in a joyous way, even when times are hard. Leisure is when you find something so awesome, you're able to lose sight of everything else. And this is why I think that faith is to do with leisure. Because in my experience, with all my distractions, there's only Jesus. There's only the truth of the cross. There's only realizing, oh man, actually God does love me and is willing to give everything up for me. There's only that in my whole life that can grab my attention and mean that I've got some governance that comes from joy. That means that stuff, when it's really troublesome around about me, can still miraculously pale somehow. Not all the time, but when I'm focused on Him, it can. I think that's what leisure is. Finding something that is so awesome, like what Mary found, that time stops, things pale, and you're governed with joy. Mary's not fractured. She's been restored. And Jesus says, and this really lovely end to the story, because there's a strong sense in which I think a lot of that room would rather Mary was not in that where she was. And faith can feel like that sometimes. You tell people that you've had a religious experience or you're on the road to righteousness, and it feels like people can just pull it away from you any bit. You can't be having that. I know you. And Jesus says to her in this moment, when you lose yourself in me like that, nobody can take that away. It's unbelievable what He says. So that's Mary and Martha. End of the sermon. Often, what we do with... Well, there's a bit more. Just a little bit more. Often what we do with Mary and Martha, what I've done pretty much my whole life, is we stand them next to each other, like as opposing sort of characters. They're heavily caricatured people in the Bible story. We've probably drawn them, we've probably got strong ideas about the both of them, and we see them as like opposites that we've got to decide over. Dismiss one, or admit we like one, or something like that. I just wonder, with the help of N.T. Wright, who got me to think about this idea, if we'd be better to see them as a whole picture. Not just to tear Martha to bits, or to exalt Mary unnecessarily, but to think of them as sisters who help us get a bigger idea what it's like to be discipled by God. What Jesus does, I think, in this text, and why I think that kind of idea holds together, is that He places Himself between them two. He doesn't aggravate the situation, doesn't condemn one over the other. He stands between them both, as only Jesus can, I think, and then He becomes the center of their orbit, draws them both to Him. He works with them from the kind of people that they are and from the place that they're in. He picks them up and He says, right, Martha, you're here, Mary, you're here. I'll be in the middle and I'll work with you from where you're at. So they're interesting characters to study, Mary and Martha. Later on, and you can read this in John's Gospel, it's John's account of Jesus' life, chapter 11 and chapter 12 talks about Mary and Martha again. So there's two little stories that just help us think of them more as one than as separate entities or opposing characters. Martha, we find, even though we've got this view of Martha, we find her again in other points in the Bible, she's still serving. She's still working really hard. Despite what Jesus has said here, she's still a servant-heart person. And Mary, you might remember, Mary is at Jesus' feet again and again in the Bible story. She carries on being the same kind of person that she is, at His feet. And when Lazarus, their brother, passes away, Jesus will speak a blunt truth to the kind of person that Martha is. I'm the way, the truth, and life. He'll speak to her in a really blunt sort of way, and He'll share tears with Mary. He speaks to them both where they are, as they are, helping them to be like Him. Here's the point, I think. Jesus doesn't erase the different personalities in these two women, which we might feel like is a bit of a threat to us. If we become a Christian, I'll have to not be like this TV, like do this or be like this kind of a person. We might feel that as a bit of a threat before we think about jumping all in with Christianity. Jesus doesn't erase the personalities. What he does is maximize and redeem them. Mary, the all heart at the feet of Jesus. Martha, the wants to look after people, wants to work hard. Jesus takes them both. And they both need him, and he takes them both and maximizes them. To be a Christian, you do not need, I'm sure I've probably used this language before, of a personality transplant. I don't think you need a personality transplant to be a Christian. But there is a God-centered version of you that's there. There's a God-maximized version of you that's out there. That's a possibility. Let me wrap up. You need to hear him name your fracture. You need to listen to what he says. You need to move closer to him than you're comfortable with. And you need to realize he's the only one that can put you at leisure